Hi, Vincent.
Hi, are we on YouTube?
Um, I'm afraid I forgot that you. I'm sort of multitasking, so I know it's only when I did YouTube that I thought, oh, you said try that we both agreed to start try Spaces one more time, but then I'd started it. But anyway, here we are, and maybe we should because it's a new discussion. We haven't quite discussed it before, or have we? I
Well,
suppose we sort of have.
we've discussed the Noahide laws in Sharia before. No, we can do it. We can do it here. It'll just be harder for people to join. People won't, join in such large numbers. I like. I don't know. I think YouTube is pretty much like run its course.
Well, the thing is, YouTube is still better than. I mean, it has the most features, transcripts, and all kinds of things that make it more fun than and interactive than any other kind of social media, I suppose. And the thing is, people respect it a bit more because it has rules, right? So, some people have been complaining that X is terrible because because people think they can say anything and then they do, and it doesn't really help the debate at all that people think they can say anything. So maybe it just sort of disciplines us, and also it makes us more searchable. I think that's another one of its advantages. Wouldn't you agree? Oh dear, I can't seem to hear Vincent saying anything in response to what I've said. Vincent?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, but you went
Oh,
quiet for a bit, so I was thinking maybe something's wrong here.
no, no, no. I don't know. Maybe it's my headset. Um, Well, they better get it together over on X and make it a better, streaming platform than what they've got right now.
Well, the thing is, in a way, we're spoiled for choice, and I think people are now being divided by their social media platforms, right? It's all the liberals have gone over to Blue Sky, and then we're just sort of there in our, I guess, safe spaces.
Blue
When
Sky? I've
really
never
we
even
should
heard
be,
of Blue Sky. There's a thing called Blue Sky,
yeah.
and
And
who's
so
using that?
well, the liberals, I guess they feel safer, at Blue Sky. I haven't, I haven't looked at it yet. I haven't even looked at it. It's like, well, Facebook has something. Is it called Threads or something? When it tried to do a Twitter. I mean, I'm so confused. I mean, there's so many. So, I mean, it tries to look like Twitter. The early Twitter. So, instead of a bird, there's a blue butterfly. But it looks like Mastodon, and of course nobody will be there, and there's nobody to argue with. And really, there should be, one platform where everybody goes. Otherwise, well, there's not much point, is there? Because in a way, we just become users of a particular social media platform, said to be, said to represent a certain, type of political view. So it's just getting too crazy, really. But I didn't think we have that much to argue about, do we, Vincent? Hello, Vincent. I can't hear you. It doesn't look like it's working on StreamYard either. Okay, he dropped out. So, Vincent, did you hear what I was saying?
Um, yeah, hold on. Yeah, that basically we're all on our own little platforms that correlate with our political ideology, and there's nobody to fight with. But look, if the liberals get off Twitter, they're not going to have any news to post on.
Well, yes, and obviously, these discussions need to be had, or else it won't be resolved, right? And that's, intolerable, really. You have a dispute with somebody, and you want to know who's right, and there's no way of resolving it. And people don't even want to argue about anything anymore. I mean, this is what I was complaining about, with the dissident right. They can't even argue with each other. So I was complaining to Stephen J. James last night that it was ridiculous that we, that millennial is not about discussion. It's a community. So he's doing his, millennial words is doing his, nannying of the dissident right, and forcing people to not argue with each other. And it's like, well, what's the point? We have to argue with somebody because, if we don't agree with whoever, that there must be a way of resolving it, or violence is the only consequence. I mean, the whole point of having a court and legal system is for people to, resolve their differences in a legal and peaceful way.
Well, that's the thing that all these young right white men don't have a legal system, and this is why I propose secular paganism. It is a legal system, and I learned, like, all these centuries from the Jews and the Muslims, you haven't learned you need a legal system in order to get anywhere. You need to propose a set of laws. Like, I always say, the only reason Hitler gave the Nazi Party 25 points, before that they were just a shamble of nothing. They had no ideology.
Yeah, I mean, they're just too dumb to understand this anymore. It's sort of like, oh, you don't agree with us. You seem to be pushing back on us. Therefore, we hate you and you are the enemy. And that's how they think. So, people in the dissident right abuse their power. It's like, oh, I'm such a big YouTuber now that I can call the shots about, matters of morality, even. you know they think, oh well, I'm so big now, I can tell people who like me to ostracize you because you said something that offended me. I can block you. I can tell my supporters to go after you, etc. And these people seem to think that any power they might acquire is to be abused before they lose it. It's sort of like, I remember when I just got on YouTube, and the number of people who abuse their wrenches, and it's sort of like, well, I may have been given a wrench, but I won't have it long, so I might as well, use it to hide and time out, you know, people in people I don't like in a live chat. And so they think in the short term way, like, if I get any power, I have to use it before it's taken away from me. And even if it's not in an ethical way, they will do it because they think, well, it would be a waste of an opportunity not to abuse the power that is given to them. I mean, literally, that's how they think. And then they lie. They say on their YouTube channels that they'll talk to anyone, and then they won't. And they actually don't think they're doing anything wrong. And that's why, he's just very stale now. Millennial Rose. I mean, you don't listen to him, do you?
No, I don't listen to any of these white nationalists. They're all horrible. I don't want to listen to the same things over. Like I was listening to Stephen J. James, and a lot of it is like this banter. Like they were sitting around. You know, a lot of it is just like
Bonding and being nice to each other and
bonding
gossiping.
and gossiping and like boys with their toys talk. Like they were talking about the what's it called, the drones that are appearing over America, but it didn't stay there, and it devolved into this thing about drones and having drones, and do you have a drone, and how big is your drone, and are you allowed to fly your drone over this, like kind of just like boys with their toys, like there's a reason why white straight men are in such horrible circumstances. It's because of their behavior. I mean, it's really disgusting that it even took this long. The Talmud has been around forever. If the Jews were such your big enemy, why didn't your grandparents learn the Talmud? If Jews were considered these horrible people, it's because all these white straight people are not very curious. They just wanted to hate the Jews for whatever reason they wanted to hate the Jews, and they didn't want to look into the Talmud and find out really why, and they didn't read the Talmud. And now, these people who do read the Talmud, they read little cherry-picked quotes out of the Talmud, and some of them are fake. I know a lot of these Talmud quotes are fake, and they purposely make fake Talmud quotes. Um, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, a lot of stuff, it's pointless. Like, I'd rather have a discussion. Like, I would rather talk with Noahide Tom because, even though Noahide Tom might annoy me a little bit in his convictions, at least it seems like it's a constantly logical, rational conversation that has meaning and substance. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, at least we're discussing ideas. We're not just sort of gossiping and bonding with each other
yeah, no, this
like
male bonding you.
women.
Well, it's the male bonding. And it's that kind of straight male lack of seriousness. Like they always used to tell us, oh, your shows are too serious. All you do is, they're like, it needs to be 80% entertainment, 20% substance. Like I can't even, first of all, when I come on here, I'm not necessarily 100% like, oh, let me entertain my audience today. Like I'm trying to, if you're interested in the subject, listen, but I'm not going to be throwing out jokes. I'm not going to be throwing out this, that. I'm not going to talk about what do I, my birds? Is that's probably about as far into my personal life and deviation into other topics that I have ever gone to. And how, what, I spend 2 minutes talking about my birds and then we move on. Like, it's not like, it's, I don't sit there and have like, and then everything is very culture, right? They were talking about, okay, they were complaining about the New World Order because they were showing these drones that were delivering drinks from coffee shops to people on the beach in Dubai. And they're like, oh God, is this what we've, like, okay, that's like a cultural phenomenon. Is that really that big of a deal? Okay, a fucking drone dropped off a latte to a woman on a beach. Like, is that really destroying your life? Is that, it's like, they get wrapped up in like little cultural things. And, I'm less about, I do believe culture is important, but like culture is, less of a stringent subject than laws. Like I don't like when white straight men are like, we need to change the culture through art. Fuck that. This thing, like they like art more than science. They like poetry more than laws.
They sound like girls, right?
Well,
It's
actually, no. I find girls to be less. I find like girls, like I told you, I do find men too abstract, and I find women more concrete. And like you're saying that they're acting like girls. No, I think they're acting like straight men. I think that, it's like they want the abstract up in the air. They want to sit and philosophize. Like Race Revenge is writing a book about the history of religion. Like, how we don't need another book on the history of religion. That's not going to save the white race. Some kind of like with secular paganism, I didn't even invent a spirituality. I'm going to give suggestions. I want to write on that and like suggestions and stuff like that. But I'm not presenting some new spirituality to save the West. I'm not like, and if they did invent a religion, these white men, it would be antinomian and it would have no rules or regulations. And it would probably be about, oh, it's you are God and your personal revelation is your destiny. Like just like real, just shallow,
Primitive, stupid.
shallow stuff. Yeah, just shallow. Like
I think I met Jesus. I saw him from across the room. It's like, fuck off, and it's like, yeah, so what? You're probably on drugs or you were hallucinating. So who cares? Who cares if you thought you saw Jesus? At least the Muslims would say, "Ooh, I thought I saw Muhammad," and the Jews don't do that either. You know.
yeah, personal revelation. I had a personal revelation. This guy was spreading cosmotheism because he had a dream, a vivid dream that the gods sent him. And, it's like, I'm not getting into all that.
I mean, Christianity is stupid because it is subjective, and for not for no reason did the Romans at the time call Christianity a religion for slaves and women. Because I mean, what they were supposed to do really was, you pay your taxes, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and what is God's. But just shut up about your religion, turn the other cheek, and don't worry about the rules. There aren't really any. Just obey the law of the land, and if you're lucky, we're going to let you live. I mean, that's basically the message to Christians, and it's still the message. Because they have no rules. They still have no rules after all this time. And they don't want any. I mean, to the extent that they want any rules, it's like, well, if only we could burn heretics at the stake again. If only we could start kicking, the wrong kind of Christian around. If only we could kick and kick out the Jews, be mean to the Muslims. That's all they want. And they're prepared to say that they believe that Jesus is God in order to be part of this gang. So I think it's a disgusting religion, and I really have to, show people what I think about it.
Well, it's rotted out white people's brains. And, I had, yesterday we did the discussion about laws of fear versus laws of love, and it's like, it's even like I notice Christianity in all the psychology. So I don't just go. I do see another psychologist now who's not involved in the Christian counseling center I go to. I see him because I wanted another opinion and stuff like that. But even he is like, well, he really upset me because he was like, well, fear's not a good motivator. Because he's like, well, why don't you want to do bad things? And I said, well, I'm scared of getting caught. And it was like, well, Christians are about, well, it's not about punishment. It's about doing what's right because God put the law in your heart. Like, I don't necessarily believe the law is on my heart, to be honest with you. Like, I don't know. Like, if there were no rules against stealing, would I steal? I don't know. Maybe I would. I don't know.
Well, yeah, because ultimately people say when they're told not to do something, it's like, well, there's no law against it, is there? You know, so ultimately it is about morality. And they won't admit it because, like Tom, it was just so disgusting the way he wouldn't answer the question. He kept saying, oh, if you don't obey the laws of God willingly, it just means you're not right with God. Well, a lot of people are not right with God. Well, we're just going to forget about it.
Yes,
It's like,
Tom was posing himself as some kind of like hyper like godlike virtuous man that doesn't want to ever sleep around on his wife or anything like that because he's right with God. Like he was mixing in too much Christianity and too much other philosophy into this. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think rabbis tell people if you follow the Noahide laws, you're not going to be tempted to do bad things anymore.
no, I mean, the Jews are quite sensible in that they say that we all have the evil inclination. It's like, well, we want we want God to approve of us, but we also want to disobey. Yeah, we want to break the laws. But we then we think again. It's like, well, you know, I don't want to be killed or stolen from, etc. But then we do, certain things to other people that we know we wouldn't like if it were done to us,
Correct.
because we think we can get away with it. I mean, that's it, isn't it? We think we can get away with it, so we do it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there has to be, and like, obviously you can't have a highway system and expect everyone, to follow the speed limit because they're good people. Like, that's not a realistic expectation.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, Tom just didn't want to, be. I think I did say, look, you live in California. You wouldn't like any of your friends or your wife to know that you're hanging out with us talking about these things. And that's why he just couldn't get a straight answer from him about anything. It's like, the no hide laws, should it be enforced or not? And he seemed to be thinking that, people will just do it out of the goodness of their hearts. And no harsh laws need to be passed in order to show that we really mean business when we, say we're going to obey these laws.
Yeah, no, he didn't want to take the full plunge. He didn't want to fully throw himself in there and say yes. Well, you had to push him in order to get him to say yes. And then he said, "Well, it's a three-strike rule, and first we
It's
expel you."
multifaceted.
Yeah, it's so many strikes. First, you have to be expelled from the community, and only if you re-enter and start your program again, then we might do something. It's just that he was trying to avoid everything. He was trying to avoid everything. But you know what? The Jews are doing that too. I meet Jews who fucking lie and who say, oh well, there are no punishments. It's all just voluntary. Even some Jews don't want to, they're too scared to say that there's punishment.
Yeah, yeah, and I know rabbis who say that, all I'm doing is teaching the Torah as our ancestors understood it, but I'm so unpopular now. Nobody will, invite me to talk to anybody about anything. And it's like, well, obviously the Jews have got the disease of liberalism, I suppose, and what the church now does is basically tell everyone that the liberals in particular, that they're going to heaven. So there is a sense of entitlement now. But what are the laws really? I mean, if you go back to the Old Testament, it's like, well, it does say that there are 36 capital offences. So God, and it's like, well, if you, are convicted of breaking the Sabbath, well, you're going to be stoned to death, and all sorts of other little things as well will get you executed, and and the Jews pretend it doesn't really matter. It's just, oh, it's just God, showing how displeased he would be if we did those things. It's like, yeah, he said death, And did he ever rescind these punishments?
Well, it
And
doesn't it? But at the same time, it's like maybe these people are being rewarded because they don't have principles. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the more principles you have, the harder it is for you, and the stronger you stand by them, and the more convicted and less you bend them, the harder it is for you to get power.
yeah, so the rules should be flexible enough for you to think, well, it does the job of stopping people from killing and stealing and blah blah, but it isn't unduly harsh. So in law there is this principle of natural justice, that the punishment should fit the crime, meaning that it should be proportionate. So if I step on your toe, you shouldn't be beheading me, kind of thing.
Okay. Well, the only thing is that the question is that, Islam is soft on idolatry, and the question is, well, how evil of a crime is idolatry? And I always say it's not fair that God said to the Jews, it's definitely bad for you, and you definitely can't do it. But when it comes to these Gentiles, I'm just going to allow them to do it if they want to.
Well, I, I link to these verses in the Quran that says, definitely says that God doesn't need, anyone to defend His name. So
But he did in
it's
ancient
pretty clear.
Israel. In ancient Israel, he did.
Yeah, yeah. So if you can see, if we accept the narrative that both the Torah and the Quran come from God, then we can make sense of it. It's sort of like choose between the two. Are you stupid or something? Do you really want the one with 36 capital offenses?
Well, somebody with more principles would want idolatry to be totally banned, not tolerated.
Yeah, but if you go to the Hadith, you will know that there is this thing called hidden idolatry. And hidden idolatry
I
is basically, I know you can't take it seriously, but it's in the Hadith, and it's also, there's quite a helpful Wikipedia entry about it, and it's saying that, you're just pretending to believe, but you don't, and you're being a hypocrite. And then
okay,
the
but
Quran
that's
says
not.
you're going to hell if you're a hypocrite.
You
Because in
cannot. You
effect, you're
cannot.
being,
You cannot put people on trial for something that's hidden that nobody knows about.
I know, that's why the Quran only says that you just go to hell. Obviously, you're not going to be executed for idolatry in this life, but in the next life, if God finds that you've been finding all sorts of stupid excuses not to obey your religious principles, then you're going to hell. Because I think the reasoning must be this, that yeah, you can pretend to be, this Muslim who, doesn't eat pork and prays 5 times daily, but won't support Sharia, or some other important Islamic principle because he doesn't want to get into trouble with, you know, you know, Muslims who are more powerful than he is, or something, or something of that nature. So it just means that you might as well be an idolater, because the definition of an idolater, apart from being, somebody who worships it, something that isn't God, is somebody who is deprived of the guidance of the Quran. But
Okay, yeah, but you're missing. The point is that if I were to become Abrahamic, I wouldn't become Muslim because I would feel slighted that the Jews were considered good enough to withhold a higher version of the law, but I'm just a Gentile, so I get a pass. Like, no, I don't want that.
well,
This
the thing
isn't,
is, you're never happy because it's like, well,
no,
if
but
you're a
no, it's
Jew,
not. No,
you
it's
say, well,
about
why?
principles.
It's so stupid. It's so harsh. You know.
Why? What's so hard about not practicing idolatry?
No, I think you're just supposed to look at the two books, right? And just say, well, one is obviously the one to choose from. I'm okay. So
Okay, but
here's
I would not stand if a teacher gave out two versions of a test and she gave me the lower version because she said I wasn't good enough to do the higher version. I would be upset.
well, what if it's true that the harder, higher version would be too
Uh,
hard for you?
well, I wouldn't want to believe that Jews are somehow internally better than me, and that I just need to accept the fact that I'm not on their level.
Look, I think the the fact that the Quran was revealed and is now a world that Islam is now a world religion demonstrates that a lot of the reason why people won't become Muslim is pure snobbery. It really is snobbery.
No, okay, but I'm giving you my reason. I'm not an Abrahamic, but if I was,
But
my
you just
que-
said that you
my
don't want to
question.
be considered a peasant, and so you'd want the harder version. But I'm saying the harder version means that you will be punished more harshly in the afterlife, and you're saying you don't
Yeah, but
care,
for I'm
and that's
talking.
because you don't believe in the afterlife.
Well,
That's why
no,
you
that's
don't
because
care.
if you're talking about idolatry, this is for people who don't believe in idolatry. So the question becomes, if you don't believe in idolatry, is it only good to kill idol worshippers for Jews, so everyone else has to just tolerate it and let it be in society? Like, why were the Jews allowed a clean society and Muslims aren't? Like,
Well, they
why?
don't get a clean society.
Well, in ancient Israel, they cleansed their society of idolatry. They didn't just allow idol worshippers to walk around and set up
Well,
idols.
they
And
themselves were guilty of idolatry, right? I mean,
wow.
that's the story of the destruction of the first temple. I mean,
Okay,
that's the story.
and they
They,
okay,
they, they
fine. They were
worshipped other gods and then God punished
and
them
they were
by.
punished. Yeah, and they were
Yeah.
punished.
But they keep sliding back into it.
Okay, but they're still punished when they do it. So it's not like they get away with it. And the law
But they
is
still
even
haven't learned.
okay, but even if the law is not being applied, the law still is to get rid of idol worshippers.
Yeah, but I suppose technically they know they're not supposed to be bowing before idols, but you already know that they're kind of sliding into let's be nice to the Hindus who do worship idols. It's like, and the thing is, yeah, they've kind of said that it's okay for Christians to be Christian or something stupid like that, except nobody spotted it, right? In medieval times, it was Mendelssohn, wasn't it? I forget his first name now. Um, and he said, well, I guess, okay, it was a German Enlightenment, so the German Christians were being nice to him and invited him to Christianity. And he said, oh, I can't. But anyway, his children, became Christian or, assimilated. And then they had the problem with the Nazis. And some Jews are saying, that's a reason. The reason was that God couldn't stand these Jews in Germany partying with the Gentiles and marrying these Christians. I mean, of course, other Jews will say, well, what a terrible thing to say that, the Holocaust was justified and God's will, etc. But the point is, there's more than one interpretation of any event. And it is about cause and effect. So, unless you believe that all good and evil come from God, you're just going to be looking for somebody to blame for, some bad stuff that happened. But it's only when you literally believe that God is, personally punishing you or, rewarding you, you will be thanking somebody else and blaming someone else. Which is why it's so important to have the correct beliefs. And we also know that people were, executed or ostracized for having the wrong beliefs. But if you have the wrong beliefs, you're going to act in a totally different way.
Well, I think you're just missing the point. You're missing the point that somebody would be insulted that only the Jews are capable of higher functioning under the law, and that the law needs to be, you need to put training wheels on the law for Gentiles. Like, that doesn't
Okay,
sound.
well, I mean, if you're so insulted to be a Gentile, you can always convert to Judaism. But then you'll be punished as a Jew if God exists. It's like,
Yeah, but if I accept the Noahide laws, I'm under the same. I'm under no, except for the ritual shit. When it comes to my trial and punishment, I'm not held to a lower standard than a Jew. Well, I mean, even okay. The thing with Shatuf, isn't that a little bit insulting? Where you tell the non-Jew, well, look, Shatuf is a lower understanding, and it's not as good as monotheism, but because you're a Gentile, it's okay for you. God doesn't care.
well, the Gentile just doesn't want to be told, he's an idolater. The Christian doesn't
No,
want to
but
be
you don't
told.
understand. How would you feel if I said, well, these children have to learn what's right, but since you're not a Jew, you can learn nonsense at school, and it doesn't matter it doesn't matter if you learn what's proper or not because you're not a Jew. Like, that's like insulting.
Well, sure, but some people will think, well, okay, well, I don't want to live like a Jew, so I don't want to, you know, be their, follow their
Yeah, but
rules.
if you're against idolatry, you wouldn't want your okay. So in a strictly pure Sanhedrin Jewish society, if there were idol worshippers spreading idolatry in your society, it would be wiped out. But under your system, idol worshippers would be able to go in and pollute society all they want, and there's nothing anyone can do about it.
Well, my position is that even if you got rid of all the idols in the temples, people will still not be doing the right thing because they don't really believe. They don't really believe in God, and
Okay, but that's not, you don't have that logic for Jews in ancient Israel. You don't
no, it's the
say, oh,
same.
no, it's
No,
not, because in ancient Israel it was forbidden, and you're not forbidding it. So you can't just say, oh, if you're not going to forbid it for ancient Israel, then don't forbid it for the Gentiles.
I don't think I understand what you're
Or
saying.
if you're not going to allow something in ancient Israel, don't allow it for the Gentiles. That's like saying, don't bury any nuclear waste near my family home, but you can bury it near someone else's. Like, that's just not. It's not right. It's not right to say, well, our community needs to be kept safe from this corrosive thing, but your community, it's fine.
What do you expect a Jew to do? It's like, well, if I'm a Jew, I'm supposed to be following all these rules, and you hate me because I follow, more restrictive rules. But you don't even want to be a Jew, but you still hate me anyway because,
It wouldn't
you
be
know,
it wouldn't be hatred. It would be hatred for God, not the Jews, because you would say, "Why do I get training wheels? Why are you allowing this
yeah, because you
abomination?"
can't do it and you don't want to. So why are you whinging?
But
You don't even want to
to
be a Jew,
tell
so it's just so crazy.
no. Well, if you could be with the Noahide laws, you are held up. It's the Noahide laws does not allow pollution in society. It wipes it out even in Gentile society. It doesn't make this, oh, it's okay for the Gentiles because they're not good enough.
Well, I'm saying that the the whole idea of this really difficult thing, it's like, okay, it's like of the penny farthing. You know what it is? It's this
Penny,
unicycle thing, you see in old movies, right? It's a
mm-hmm.
bicycle that's very high with a
Yeah.
little wheel. Anyway, I think it looks kind of difficult to ride. But obviously, in those days, people did learn how to do it, and obviously, it's harder to ride than an ordinary bicycle. Would you say?
Well, yes, but to just
So I
automatically,
don't want to be like, oh, I wish I don't want a penny farthing. I'd like a bike, thanks. I don't sort of wish, yeah. If I tried really hard, I might learn how to
okay, but
ride
if
it, but
you
I don't want to
okay,
ride it.
but if your parents went to one child and said that is your twin, that is your age, that is your mental capacity, and said, you know what, you're advanced enough to try to learn this, and then they turned to you and said, but you are not up to this, so we're giving you a bike. Like, that's just not going to fly
Okay, then
well.
maybe it's justified. What do you think the personalized curriculum is all
So,
about?
so then you think that Jews are fucking, somehow innately better than Gentiles, that they deserve a higher standard?
Well, I think even the people who hate them think that. It's like, oh, look at you, Jew. You did this wrong and that wrong, and we expect better of you. And that's the implicit accusation. It's like, oh, you're a Jew. We expect better of you. Look at you eating pork and blah blah, and because it's the liberal Jews that the Gentile hates.
That's,
It's like
you
you're not
know,
even a proper Jew. You just call yourself that but you break the
That's not
Sabbath and
when.
you eat
That's
pork.
not why most white nationalists don't like Jews, because secular liberal Jews are spreading homosexuality and feminism, not because they're eating pork or breaking the Sabbath. I mean, I don't think, all these white nationalists we talk to say, "Oh, these Jews are breaking the Sabbath, and so therefore we hate them." Like, it has nothing to do with breaking Sabbath laws.
I don't think they even acknowledge it. Of course, they don't acknowledge. They probably don't even think about it, right? I don't think they do. It's just that I don't like them, and well, I just don't. So if I don't like them, I can blame them for everything, whether or not they are to blame. I think that is, fundamentally the problem.
Well, I think you're changing it. I mean, I could just see somebody with Islam going to Noahide law because they're saying, well, I don't feel like I need training wheels. They would say, I find this to be insulting that I need training wheels because I'm not Jewish. And
Okay, I don't want the restrictions of being a Jew. I mean, just hearing about it is enough for me
okay, but
to.
okay,
So,
well,
but I mean, okay, you want to be thought of as good enough, but so you yourself implicitly think that it is better to be a Jew. You are the one. I'm happy being
no,
a Gentile.
if I were an Abrahamic, I wouldn't want this separation between Jew and Gentile. If I were Abrahamic, I
But there
wouldn't
is
want
a
this.
reason for it.
Okay, well, I just wouldn't accept it, and I would go with the Noahide laws because at least then I'm not like a child. I'm not like an infant.
But this means that you're going to be abolishing the First Amendment.
Well, you're treating Gentiles like spiritual infants.
So what? Nobody wants.
Well,
No, does anybody want to be executed for idolatry or blasphemy? It,
people who don't practice it don't mind.
yeah, but I mean, you haven't put it as a serious proposition to anybody.
Well, the Jews are putting it as a serious proposition to people.
They're not who, where?
People like they have the whole president and Congress lauding these laws like they're a good thing. Like, it's not
Yeah,
implemented
but
yet.
they don't know that it means death. And you,
Do you really
we
think?
know that
Do you really think that Joe Biden just said no high law without knowing what they are? Even he
yes,
doesn't
he's
even know what.
senile.
No, he said this was in 1992 when he presented Education and Sharing Day. You
I
think
don't
he
think
had?
he actually thought that in America, people would be executed for idolatry and blasphemy. I'm sure
Well, he
it
knew
didn't occur to him at all.
Well, he must know what the laws are. Ronald Reagan wrote no idolatry on his proclamation. He said no idolatry in his proclamation. He knew it outlawed idolatry.
Well, he's a. These are just politicians, right? They want to go along to get along, and they want to say yes and no at the same time.
Okay, well, they know that these
I
laws
suppose they think,
outlaw
well, it would be
idolatry.
nice, but there's not going to be any law against it. I must say that I thought it would be extremely unlikely for Americans to actually carry out all the death penalties.
Well, don't go around. That's like saying, "Oh, I was promoting Nazi law because I thought it would never actually happen." Like, you don't promote a law and then just fall back and say, "Well, I'm innocent because I didn't actually think that they would do it." Like, if you're promoting a law, like, you are culpable, whether you thought it was going to happen or not. If you're promoting it, you're promoting it.
Okay, but anyway, I'm sure politicians who are made to lend their support to so many causes were not taking it seriously. They thought it was extremely unlikely that people would be executed for idolatry and blasphemy. Look, yo mama, I have adjusted my audio, so I don't know what else to do now. I mean, last time somebody complained about the audio, when I listened back to it, it was fine. So, Bird Nest said, Harvard Law School, one of the most prestigious institutions of its kind in the world, has posted a verse of the Holy Quran at the entrance of its faculty library. Had you heard of that? I haven't.
No, I mean, but pagans should really fight against that. I mean, if you're just going to allow, if you're going to allow Islam to become normalized and Sharia law to become normalized, then just you deserve what you got. I mean, this is why they need secular paganism, because this tolerance cannot be, it's just and that's the other thing is just
No, you're
the
not making sense, Vincent. Come on,
you
you
don't
need to
want no.
explain yourself.
Well, obviously, I'm against Sharia, so I don't believe, or I'm
Yeah,
against
but for some
monotheism.
reason you're for the Noahide laws, which is even harsher.
I'm not. No, I'm not. Well, I want. Okay, I want Judeo-Hinduism to fight with Islam so that neither of them can gain full control. That's what I want. I want my enemies killing each other.
Well, this would. Well, okay, currently there's idolatry everywhere. So you've already got your way. And you're complaining about the degeneracy that is being caused by people who, don't follow the rules.
Claire,
So,
can you give me literally 4 minutes? I will be right back.
all right. Okay, so I will read the chat since it is full of comments by Bird Nest Ratfest. Now, he said, the whole Western modern civilization is a very bad, corrupt copy of the Sharia Khalifa system. So, I guess the Ottoman Empire was corrupt, which is why it fell. And of course, the West is now degenerate. So, I don't know what that verse outside the entrance of the law faculty library says. Bird Nest Fest says, verse 135 of the Surah Al-Nisa has been posted at a wall facing the faculty's main entrance, dedicated to the best phrases articulating justice. O ye who believe, stand up firmly for justice as witness to Allah, even as against yourselves or your parents or your kin, wherever it be. So don't perjure yourself. Whether it be against rich or poor, for Allah can best protect both. Follow not the lusts of your hearts, lest ye swerve, and if ye distort justice or decline to do justice, verily Allah is well acquainted with all that ye do. Established in 1817, Harvard is the oldest continually operating law school in the United States and is some of the largest academic law library in the world. Yes, so, I'm basically saying to Americans that the Founding Fathers were proto-Muslim. And the whole idea of being a republic as opposed to being a kingdom is because the Founding Fathers, having experienced monarchy in Europe, didn't want any of it in the New World. So, and that the fact that they separated the church from their state is one of the great leaps forward in the administration of justice. I mean, of course, we still get injustice, but the principles have been established about not letting the church interfere with the state. But that's because Christianity, with all its atrocities and peculiarities, is not fit for purpose. What is fit for purpose? You know my answer. And obviously the Quran is better than the New Testament because it at least claims to be from God, and whether or not you think it is from God, it is still the best available guide to humanity. So Vincent, for his own peculiar reasons, wants America not to follow any rule of law, because he hates the Abrahamic God, and that's it really. So my position is that the First Amendment is more likely to be supported if there were more American Muslims than if there were fewer American Muslims, because Muslims would be proud to say that their holy book supports the First Amendment. And also, if you can prove that a lot of your rights come from the Quran, a lot of your human rights come from the Quran, then you'd like it even more. Sadly, Muslims don't really know their Quran. They don't really say what is necessary to be said to rehabilitate the image of Islam. They just fuss about silly things, provoking the hatred and contempt of non-Muslims. And a lot of the hatred for and fear of Muslims is cultural and social. Obviously as a religion of low status immigrants, it is not going to be immediately accepted by American, white middle class Americans who think of themselves as far superior. I mean, the snobbery of the middle class is not just confined to immigrants; it's confined to, working class people of the same race. You know this through the Trump derangement syndrome.
Hello?
Hello.
Well, I don't know. I think that there's some questions to be asked about, just how equal are Jews and Gentiles in God's eyes. And, I don't, it's just, yeah, how equal are Jews and Gentiles in God's eyes? So it's just, they get to be the barometer and everyone else is just here to live up to their, or...
I'm just entirely without resentment or jealousy.
That's unlikely to be true for the vast majority of the human race.
Okay, so you're eaten up by envy. Why wasn't I chosen? It's like, okay, so you weren't chosen. You're free to convert to Judaism, so go right ahead.
Okay, but it goes further.
It'll be too tough for you.
Not only are you not chosen, but it's like you don't even need to try. It's like God doesn't even.
But why would you?
Well, that's like saying, why would you try to get into med school? What if med school was only for Jews?
But how about I don't want to go to med school? I don't want to do something that I don't have the capacity to do and wouldn't enjoy doing anyway. So if somebody wants to
What do you mean not the capacity? That's where it comes in. You don't think that God didn't think the Gentiles had the capacity. That's insulting.
Well, I mean, you choose to do it this way. I mean, maybe the Jews are the ones who are, being stupid. I mean, you just assume that, they always have one over you and, God's chosen people, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, who has a better life? And I suppose you think, oh, but the middle class and, whatever. But it's like you wouldn't want to lead their lives. Oh, unless they're affluent and middle class. But then that just means you want to be affluent and middle class without necessarily being Jewish. Or maybe you hate your own religion so much that you think any other religion would be better than Christianity. Maybe that's it. Maybe you hate your religion.
This is not, I just want a direct relationship with God. I don't want to have to be like, oh, but he chose them first, and now I have to see what they do with their lives in order to tell me what I should do with mine. And, I want a direct relationship with God. I don't want to be like, the second son. I don't want to be like, second fiddle.
You already have a direct relationship with God. It's like you don't have, you don't have to go through the Jews to talk to God, right? I mean, there was never any suggestion.
Well, you're the one that's saying the barometer and that they're all made to convert to Islam to show the Gentiles what they're supposed to do. Like, I don't, oh, well, if the Jews convert to Islam, then that's obviously the right way because if they're doing it, it must be right.
Well, because so many people think like that, but I mean, you can just say, well, I want a religion. Which religion should I choose? And it's like, well, obviously you choose the most powerful Abrahamic, the most powerful being, and that would be the Abrahamic God. I mean, you're not going to choose, become Buddhist or Hindu. That wouldn't make sense if you want to, worship the most powerful being conceivable, and that
Well,
would be
I don't
the
know if
Abrahamic God.
I don't know if the Hindu God is less powerful than the Abrahamic God because I don't know if it's not all powerful in one. If it's all powerful in one, then what does it matter? It's the all powerful one God in Hinduism or in Islam. That doesn't exactly, it's not so clean of a, 1-to-1 ratio as you would like to think it is.
No, I'm saying if there's only one God, then it's the same one. But what's the difference between the Hindu way and the Jewish or Islamic way? And it's like, well, obviously it's through how they conceive of their God, how they worship their God, and their scripture. And it's like, well, you wouldn't want to be a bit Buddhist or Hindu, would you? Because, there's nothing prestigious about being a Hindu or a Buddhist.
Well, that's changing. That's changing now.
Do you think so?
Yes, I mean, yeah, how many Muslims did Trump put in his cabinet? None. How many Hindus are there? 3. I mean, it's
You're
not.
being very short-termist. I mean,
Well, yeah, but
it's
you're
not over
okay,
yet.
but you're also, yeah, but you're also not you're not realizing that things do change, and maybe Hinduism wasn't top dog 100 years ago, but is it only growing? Yes, this is another problem with you and the Muslims, Claire, that you don't care if something's growing. You're like, well, call me when the tree is bearing fruit. Well, it's too late. Any idiot can see a tree is growing, and then you just come in and be like, well, it's not grown yet, so I don't want to talk about it. Well, because if you want to I would just rip the baby tree out by the roots, whereas you're like, oh, well, wait until it's big and spreading seeds and has saplings and all this other kind of stuff.
What do you expect me to do?
I don't. I mean, look. Well, your prerogative is to spread non-worry about Hinduism.
Yeah, because all we have to worry individually is to choose for ourselves and our group the right religion.
Okay, well,
So
there's a new religion in town that's growing in power. It's actually the oldest religion on earth, but is it new to the political world stage? Yes, and there was a time when Northern Europeans were new and had nothing and were low status compared to Romans. And once they got something on their side, they became the most powerful people on earth. I think that Hindus have the potential now that they can piggyback off the West and use Western systems and stuff in order to advance themselves in conjunction with the Jews. Do I think that they have the potential to become a dangerous threat? Yes.
you're just focusing on the noise, because you think, oh, this one's doing better. Oh, let's follow this one who's doing better, but you don't really care about the principle of the thing. And it's like the Noahide laws sort of make it easy, but you're just not seeing it in that way.
Well, no,
I
you're
mean,
the
because
only
you
look,
don't
Claire.
actually believe.
Claire. You're the only person on earth that's making these Noahide laws so obviously anti-Hindu. I've shown you 5, 6 rabbis that say the other way. You haven't shown me a single rabbi that came out and said Hinduism is impermissible for Gentiles, and if they practice it, it's idolatry. I haven't come across one rabbi that
Yeah,
said that.
because you know what they're like, don't you?
Well, you know what, Claire? Like,
I mean,
it's
I
also
don't trust these rabbis, these university rabbis, these interfaith rabbis. So I know they're doing it for a reason, and it's not for the reason of being principled. So obviously the American government wants a blended religion, because they can, change the rules. The government wants to make religion for its people, and you seem to approve of it. Now,
I only
I don't.
approve. I only approve of it as a counter to Islam in order to,
Why do you want to
you know.
counter Islam if it's a real religion? If it's the best religion, why would you
Well,
counter
I
it?
don't think it's the best religion. I don't think
Okay,
Hindu
so what is
Noahide
the
isn't.
best religion?
Well, I think that you know the only allowing people to be either polytheist or non-theist is what you have to do. It's not, you know, not monotheism. They can't be monotheists, so you don't want
Yeah,
either.
yeah. Well, you're not gonna, be able to ban it. I know you want
Why?
it to.
Noahide law would ban polytheism, so I don't see why nobody could ban.
Well, because you can't beat the
Especially, and
narrative of the Abrahamic God.
wait, but not everyone needs. Why are there pagans on this earth if everyone needs this narrative? So there's plenty of people who heard the narrative and said they don't need it.
Who?
Well, non Abrahamics, whether they're atheists or polytheists or something else, they don't need that narrative. There's plenty. This narrative is not so overwhelming that everyone on earth falls for it.
Okay, so the people who scorn the story of the Abrahamic God would be idolaters and atheists, right? Those would be the only people who would scorn the
Well, don't they?
stories in the Bible
Well,
and the
then,
Quran.
and there's not so few of them, and they are growing. It's not, it's just, it's not like I'm pointing to things that aren't growing. I'm
Yeah, but
pointing to
yeah,
things.
they grow, they shrink. Well, I mean, why don't you just care, in the long term? Is it the right thing or not? Rather than,
Well,
pretending you
monotheism
can
is not
predict
the
the
right
future.
thing. Monotheism is not the right thing. So I know any religion
Why?
that's
Why not?
because it would reduce the psychological diversity of the human race. You need
Do
psychological and
you
ethical
really
diversity.
want lots of divisions in your society?
Yes, because then only then can nature choose the best. You need to have very highly separate peoples in order for natural selection to take place. If everyone is the same thing, that's just like that would be like killing off all your genetic diversity and only having one race. That's not sensible because you want multiple races because you don't know which race is going to be the most healthy in the future. You don't know which race has the best antigens against bacteria and viruses and all these different kinds.
That's irrelevant. I mean, really,
No, it's not.
we
You wouldn't.
already have different nations.
Okay, but if you wouldn't want to get rid of different nations, you don't want a global government either. You don't want a one world government.
Well, I would like a world that doesn't have quite so many wars. So, and if you want lots of divisions, then you'll have lots of wars. So,
Not if they're
I
not
don't
if they're
want lots of wars.
but they're not going to fight over polytheists. Are not going to fight over because you're worshiping Athena instead of Zeus and all these different kinds of things. And especially if they're
How do you
going
know?
if they're going from a beyond this method because that's not because inside Rome followers of Zeus were not murdering followers of Hera. It just wasn't happening. It wasn't going on in Greece either. It wasn't going on in Babylon. The different cults weren't murdering each other inside of the cities.
The most stable political order would be, okay, one group obeying, the basic laws, and then and obviously, if you're a country, you would want your neighbors to be, following, the same principles of international relations. So basically, you want a global order where certain eternal and universal laws are followed, to preserve the peace, and then give each country the flexibility to interpret these principles in their own way without, upsetting anyone. I mean, that's what you want. So I don't see why you would have a problem with global secular Quranism because, obviously all these different, parts of the world will have their own interpretation, but it would still be, Islamic principles. I mean, I've given you the example of, supposing America were to adopt secular Quranism, and you think, oh, but what about the variety? We have so many different states, and I say, fine, let every American state interpret it, the Quran in its own way. So
Okay,
there would
that's
be
only a single document. You don't want a single document with there's not that much, like, what difference are they going to change? The color of their flag or something? Like, what
no
difference are these?
you already know that even within the Ummah, there are many branches of Islamic jurisprudence.
Yeah, none of them are very good.
Yeah, but the thing is that that's how, things have divided over the centuries. Everybody has, oh, well, we're going to do it our way. And that's what's happened.
Okay, it's just not. It would have
Can't hear you now.
in it, and it would have to work with. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
What is there noise?
You were roboting a bit, but please say what you were trying to say now. Well, now I can't hear you.
Hello?
Hello. You need to
Yeah,
repeat yourself now.
I'm just saying that I don't think that the Quran is a perfect document. So
Okay,
I
so
say
what is
I
better
wouldn't
than
claim
that?
that I wouldn't claim that. Well, secular paganism is better than the Quran,
Yeah,
but
but there's no scripture. It's just something
it doesn't need it's natural law. You don't need scripture for natural law. There are no natural laws with
Okay,
scripture.
so
No,
when you talk about natural law, you just mean the seven Noahide laws minus the prohibition against idolatry and blasphemy. That's what you mean, isn't it?
and sexual immorality, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you already have this.
No, that they allow monotheism. They allow monotheism in the West. You're allowed to be a monotheist.
Oh, okay. So you think natural law would forbid ethical monotheism?
Unethical monotheism.
Unethical, did you say?
Yes, monotheism is
But
unethical.
who are you to say what is ethical or
It
unethical?
makes sense that it's unethical because it reduces human diversity. So I don't need to claim to be a prophet in order to say that.
Well, if you're running a country, you want as much unity and agreement as possible, but you seem to want the opposite.
No, if you want unity and agreement on things like on natural law, like no murder, no theft, no monotheism, but you don't want to have, you don't want all your population, like, I don't know, maybe reincarnation is not the best thing for humans to believe in. Maybe it is, but you don't want your whole entire population either believing in reincarnation or not believing in reincarnation. You want diversity.
Okay, well, you can't stop them from believing whatever they want. But, fundamentally, you are proposing to abolish the First Amendment, and this is fundamentally very un American, isn't it?
Well, I'm not very American. I wasn't raised very American. I didn't salute the flag as a child, nothing like that. I was taught that the American government was run by Satan. So no, I'm not very American, and I'm not going to be held down just because America doesn't do it that way. I mean, I was born here, but am I an American? Actually, not really.
Okay, but don't you understand that, individually we are weak and therefore you need to attach yourself to the most powerful group in the world?
No, like, well, there's groups that grew without attaching themselves to the powers that be already. There's groups that said, we're not going to do it your way, and like Islam did, and they grew and grew and grew, and they took their time to take over, and you know what I mean? But you think that no one else is allowed to take their time except for Islam. They're the only people that are allowed to take centuries, decades, whatever it is for them to enact their plans. It's fine, but if anyone else has a long-term plan, then they're not serious.
Well, I'm not saying all long-term plans are not serious, but you don't seem to be wanting to achieve something that is ethical or socially desirable.
Well, according to you, but there are plenty of, I mean, there's plenty. Well, first of all, secular paganism has more followers than secular Quranism, so I don't know what to tell you.
So who supports secular paganism?
Well, I told you the one person, I don't want to reveal their name, but the other person who at least finds it that, well, you just said he was you didn't say he was a hick. You said he didn't sound intelligent, but just because he has an accent doesn't mean he's not intelligent.
Oh, the Indian. Okay, I forgot.
Not the white guy from Montana that you said you listened to my thing about secular paganism with him, and then you were like, well, he doesn't sound very smart.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we all have, these unreliable, supporters who say they support you and then they fade away and then they forget they ever said that.
Okay, well, how many supporters do you have?
Well, all I can boast is that I am attaching myself to a world religion because it's the only way to go.
It's not the
I
only way to
mean,
go.
well, I
There's
don't know what else.
okay. Well, the thing
Everyone's.
is, sometimes when you accept good enough, you don't get great because you just accepted good enough.
Well, even my, relatively modest ambitions are not exactly being, fulfilled at the moment. So I don't think I'm in a position to say, oh, I want, bigger, more ambition. Because I wasn't ambitious enough. Because, when you think about it, most people can't even be reasoned with. Well, they can't, can they? I mean, you explain till you're blue in the face what the problem is, and they pretend not to understand. I mean, okay, I get it that with you, you want the complete opposite of patriarchy, but for these nationalists who want to, make America great again or whatever, I don't think they have any choice but to, restore the institution of marriage. And I don't think they have the capacity or desire for it because they're now so degenerate. And I fear, obviously there are a lot of resources and, infrastructure in the West. And if white people aren't keen on inheriting it, then I guess, that the non-whites already there will, try and make the best of things.
I'll hurry up, but I look. Well, white people have never. No civilization has ever purposely decided like, okay, we need to increase our birth rate, so let's find alternative ways to do this. No nation has ever even tried that.
Yeah, because it'll take so much time. You need to, invent the artificial womb, and then you have to kind
Well,
of
there's
take.
other ways besides artificial wombs, but I mean, there's just no one's ever even tried it. That's just like saying, well, you have to do it the old way, even though no one's ever even tried something different. You just have to do it that way. No
Because it's the
experiment,
quickest way of doing
no
it. It's the quickest
experimentation.
way.
I know it's a very on no experimentation, nothing new, try nothing new, know nothing new. It's very white people aren't like that. They are experimental and they are, willing to change something that doesn't necessarily fit in with the natural order and things like that. That's why we created all these artificial chemicals and materials and stuff because, we didn't do it the old way. I mean, you're like, well, just put some bark on the roof and some moss on top of it and it'll keep the wind and rain off of you. And, somebody said, well, I don't want to do it that way anymore. I'd like to try something a little bit different.
Well, I'm not trying to stop you. I'm just saying, we have to balance, what is practicable with, what is obviously a very remote possibility.
Okay, what's practical? It's not practical to remove white people's sexual freedoms and their birth control and force them to marry each other and start reproducing again. That's not happening anytime soon.
Not unless I get the support of
Of who? A
Western
bunch of
media.
yeah, which is run by a bunch of homosexual liberals. Like, how is that going to help you?
Well, maybe Trump will do something about these,
Trump is
the
a
gay mafia.
Noahide. Trump is a Noahide.
Well, I mean, I'm sure he'll, find as many badges to, stick on his chest.
Well, he put two gay men. Nick Fuentes was blowing up because he put two or three gay men in his cabinet already. So
Who
I
are
don't.
the gay?
Look it up. He's put one, two, three gay men into his cabinet so far. Openly gay men.
Oh, okay. Well, what, Dave Rubin?
No, I don't know if that. I forget their names. There was a list of them.
Okay. Well, he can remove them. I mean, it's not the
Why
end
would he
of the
put them
world.
there in the first place? If you're expecting him to do this like anti-gay movement, why would he put open homosexuals in his cabinet?
I don't know. Maybe he can't find anybody. Maybe he doesn't. He wants to reassure people. I don't even know. But the point is, if you want to, I posted you this link to a rabbi saying, "Oh, it's not looking good for us. Our replacement rate is 1.7. That's not good enough."
Yeah, I saw that.
So everybody's worried, and you're thinking, "Oh, let's just carry on and think about
No,
artificial
no.
wombs." It's
Yeah, well,
obviously,
think about
if you
that.
really, okay, if you really wanted to fix things ASAP, you would be, well,
Yeah,
adopting Sharia.
no,
You
not with
would.
lots. It would take lots
And
of
banning
social control.
contraception of any kind.
It takes it takes it would take a massive amount of social control in order to do that. And no, I'm not prepared to
And
do
we
that.
have the technology for it. We do. We do.
We don't have the technology for massive social control like that.
Yes, our
Okay,
phones.
Claire, you know what? Go to a bunch of gay men in the media and said get rid of birth control and see what they tell you.
Well, gay men don't need contraception.
Okay, well they're not. Gay men are still smart enough to not know that they can't take it away from heterosexuals.
When there's a will, there's a way.
Oh God, Claire. I mean, this is like these restrictions. You know, it's just like that
Look,
other.
okay, my mountain is at least, what's the word? Well, predictable. Yeah, I know people are going to go, "Oh, you can't take." It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to take away your contraception until a year after secular Quranism is adopted.
Okay, try to get people to be on your side. We'll see what happens. I don't even think the most rabid conservatives in America want to get rid of condoms and birth control and
Well,
chemical birth
I'm not even proposing that. I'm just proposing to treat unmarried parents as sex offenders,
and
and it'll
get
probably
rid
take
of.
them about a year to get over their shock.
Did he
So
get bigger? Sorry, there's a dog here.
oh,
No, I'm outside the store waiting. They're opening up the store for me.
what kind of dog is it?
It's like a husky.
Oh, right, cute.
Yeah, he seems bigger than the last time I saw him.
So he must be a puppy to be growing.
No, no, he said he didn't grow. I just thought he got bigger. He looks bigger.
Well, I guess the fur might have some bearing on the size.
Well, hold on. I'm in a store right now,
Okay.
and I don't necessarily want them to hear this whole conversation.
No. But yeah, I think, my job is to change people's minds, but I think you can change people's minds by putting arguments to them and giving incentives and, telling them stories and that they want to believe in, and, it's not completely impossible. I mean, basically you're just telling people to, well, you obviously got into a bit of trouble with your sexual liberation, and if you explain, that the reason why they're feeling upset and full of hate for their own government is because they, that trust has broken down between the government and the governed. And the reason why it's broken down is because our ruling classes are incompetent and corrupt.
Well,
Well,
okay.
it's true.
The point is to couple eugenics with free love, and if you don't, which the left stopped that because that's what the left was doing. That was the left's original agenda, and then Hitler came in and scared everybody, and now nobody wants to talk about a positive birth rate or a birth rate at all.
Look, it's very easy. If everybody agreed to do it, then it would be done. It's like, oh,
But they're not
white
okay.
people.
Okay, you know what, Claire? If everyone agreed to like sit on hot coals, things would happen too. It's just not happening. Like, that's like saying if everyone agreed to like, cover their hand when they sneeze, like, but not everyone is going to do it. No, that's a bad example. I'm just trying to think of something that people are not doing and don't want to do, and then just saying, well, if everybody did it, you know what I mean? If everybody ate
Yeah,
right all the
it would just
time,
be a media campaign. That's all
okay,
that's required. I don't know why you think it's so impossible.
okay, well, if nobody ate sugar, we would be better off too. But the idea of getting humans off sugar is just not going to happen.
Well, I mean, obviously, if you don't overconsume sugar, you should be okay. But if you eat too much of it, then obviously there will be health consequences. But yeah, there are people who have too much sugar and they become diabetic and maybe they might lose a limb or two. But I'm saying a media campaign is all that is needed to do. And everybody, like all the social media platforms, they agree and support it, and then people will change their minds. I just don't see why you.
What? Who? Where are these social media influencers that are going to outlaw chemical birth control? Where are they?
Well, we're not. I'm not proposing that people jump off the deep end of the pool when they can't even swim. But yeah, I mean, just people talking about secular Quranism would be, a good enough preparation to, you know, lay the ground for, people to not be so shocked. I mean, most people have a pretty good idea of what Sharia means. I mean, social conservatism and, no sex outside marriage, and then they just have to get used to the idea. And then they'll go, oh, I don't think I like the sound of it. And then you say, oh, but actually, you'll have this high trust society, right? People like high trust society and
Will you
make
have a high?
America great
How do I
again.
know? Is Iran a high trust society where the police force you to, or is Saudi Arabia a high trust society? I don't think so.
Okay,
What Muslim? Can you name one Muslim society that's high trust? Is Syria a high trust society?
I don't know.
Okay,
Obviously,
is Lebanon, where whatever his name is, scared to even criticize the government? Is that a high trust society?
Jordan, I think you mean, Khalid.
Not no, the Lebanon, the other Abdul or whatever his name was, the one who used to come on here and talk from Lebanon, and he said, "Oh, it's hard to protest the government." And then he asked me to take down my stream because he said that. Is that a high trust society?
No, because but he was the one who talked about going to gay sex parties. That one.
No, no, not that was Saudi Arabia. This
Okay,
one, Abdul just said it's hard to protest in my country, and he got scared the government was going to pick him up for that.
but the Lebanon, I believe, is a republic, but I'm a bit vague. Abdul Rahman is a Jordanian, isn't he? Is that the one you mean? The
Abdul, whatever.
Jordanian Abdul Rahman?
No, I don't.
And
I forget
then
his.
he called himself, authentic Semite, and
Yeah, authentic Semite. Yes.
I think that's Abdul Rahman, and he's a Jordanian who's, you know, I guess in a way he's quite easy to trace because, I mean, he talked about his Tesla and his father, and but anyway, he's being more mindful of his identity now, and we haven't seen him for a while. But okay, so Jordan is a monarchy, right? So that's a
Yeah, and
problem.
these Muslims can't even prevent themselves from having monarchies. So
Yeah, but because they're too afraid to question their monarchy, as I'm sure all these Europeans were until the founding fathers, right?
okay, so
So
what? Okay, Pakistan is not a monarchy. Do you think Pakistan has a high trust society?
no, because it's so corrupt, and it's corrupt because it's still a representative democracy, and and these Muslims are really mean to each other. But then there's a high rate of illiteracy, and Oh yes, and there's lots of tribes in Pakistan. And you want that? You want your country to be full of tribal rivalry?
Not rivalry. Look, monotheists don't fight each other. Can you explain to me which pagan war was between a polytheistic deity and another polytheistic deity for a religious reason when they said you are worshiping the wrong polytheistic deity, so we're going to kill you? What pagan war can you name that in?
I I don't know of any offhand, but usually
Well, I've never studied one. I never came across one in my
yeah,
whole entire life.
but they would say it's for different reasons. It's like, oh, you're using our water hole. It's always been
Okay, but
ours.
that's different. These monotheists have the same god, and they're going after each other. And polytheists don't do that. Polytheists wouldn't be like, especially if they were beyond this.
Then just say
Especially
it's another reason.
okay, well now the world has beyondism. Raymond Cattell forms beyondism. So now we have cooperative competition. Like we are different from each other on purpose, not by accident.
Yeah, but sometimes the government wants to, not allow this sort of being different to each other on purpose kind of thing. Like football violence. Does the government want young men to fight each other because they belong to a different football team? Yeah, I think so. I mean, the government does step in. It's like dueling. Oh, we're losing too many of our young men to their stupid duels when we want to use them as cannon fodder in our imperial wars. So they ban dueling, right? Because I mean, at the end of the day, they're breeding us. Our governments are breeding us. And the most eugenic way of breeding us is through marriage, i.e., patriarchy. I mean, that's what it's about. And then if you give people too much sexual liberation and they start enjoying sex too much with each other, then you get degeneracy and they'll just get stupid and incompetent and corrupt. I mean, and this has happened. I mean, there is, definitely causation there. And okay, we've just sort of lived through, a period of history when, maybe we enjoyed a bit of sexual liberation, but, it won't last. And if we're going to, well, if we're going to talk politics, then I guess we'll just have to kind of predict where things are going and be on the winning side within our lifetimes, hopefully.
Well, let's see. It depends on what kind of society you're trying to produce. I mean, if it
Well,
depends on
why
what you're
not we?
trying.
Well, I
Well,
mean,
I don't know where you're going to get all this social control from and from who. This is what the Jehovah's Witnesses say that I agree with them. They're against, even though they are social conservatives, they're against the government enforcing. They're not against the government enforcing morality, but what they say is that it's pointless to try to force morality on people who don't want it. That's what their whole.
does that mean there should be no laws against murder and rape and theft?
Well, those are natural laws, right? Whereas, these sexual laws are not so natural. And
Okay, I'm detecting a bit of uncertainty there. So when we talk about sexual morality, I think a lot of us think we agree with each other when in fact we don't. Because even liberals with their sexual liberation have, a minimum standard. And we know it is this. Sex with another consenting adult is okay. That is their standard,
yeah, because
right?
you're not hurting anyone. You can't rape people because that's like forcing yourself on someone.
Yeah, so a liberal would say rape is should be a crime, and obviously we shouldn't be seducing people who are not adults, because that would make us guilty of statutory rape, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's fair enough, but obviously the problem is that even that that the liberal standard of sexual morality is not good enough, and that's why we get problems. We get social problems.
Well, it wouldn't be a social problem if they had figured it out from the very beginning that you have to still maintain a high birth rate. I mean, I was reading that in these ancient pagan societies that, if you, had sex with a man, it wasn't the biggest deal in the world, but you still had to have kids. It was, if you slept with a prostitute, it wasn't the biggest thing in the world, but you still had to reproduce. It was expected of you.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, if the government were being obvious, it's like, well, they're not breeding enough. Let's make them marry earlier. Oh, they're not still not producing enough. We'll take away their contraceptives. Oh, they're still not producing enough. We'll think of reintroducing polygamy. I mean that's how a breeder would think. A breeder being our government. We have to put ourselves into their shoes. But, at the moment, they don't seem to care. In fact, they want us to kill ourselves and die childless, gay or transgender. So we have to ask ourselves, what's wrong with them? Or maybe, what's wrong with us? Why don't they want us to hang around? Why don't they think we're fit to have children? I mean, these are the naturally occurring questions. I mean, it is a bit offensive, isn't it? Imagine if your parents said, Vincent, don't bother giving us grandchildren. We're not interested. We don't think you should have babies. Imagine if they had said that. I think you'd be quite offended, wouldn't you? Would you be offended?
If they said that I shouldn't have children,
Yeah,
well, they're not saying that.
I know, but if they did, you'd be offended, wouldn't you?
Well, yes, but
Well,
yes, but
exactly, and our government is saying that to us, not
not
just to you.
exactly.
Yeah, they are. They're having all these policies that would mean that the smartest women and the most attractive men will die childless. That's what they're doing, and then they're encouraging people to be gay or transgender. They, I mean, you've heard this, population reduction program. Do you think they're doing it on purpose or not?
Well, they did. Well, for a while, governments did want to reduce their population because they couldn't take care of everybody. Japan couldn't feed all of its people. I mean, there's the other end of the spectrum too. If your population has grown to the point that your nation can't even feed itself anymore, then you have a problem.
Okay, do you know the country with the highest average age in the whole wide world? Do you know?
It's probably Japan.
Yeah. So they've got a few things wrong. But I know, a lot of white nationalists go, ooh, Japan, they're so Japanese. It's so wonderful, let's go in. But they have terrible problems.
Well,
So
if
we don't know.
they
We actually don't know what it's like to be Japanese, trying to find a wife. Or a Chinese man trying to find. Okay, everybody's having a bit of a problem. So I'm saying the problem is global. And we should just, retrace our footsteps because we're clearly not in a good place and we want to go to a better place. I mean, I sent you this link that that this rabbi was writing like, "What's wrong with us?" And then he gave a list of these ultra orthodox, the such breed as 6 per couple or whatever, and then the non-religious Jews, well, they hardly breed. So if you look at Jews, and Jews are useful because for us, for me anyway, they are a kind of control group. You see what happens to Jews, and then you can extrapolate that what happens to Jews will also happen to Gentiles, and we can also extrapolate that what happens to Gentiles would also happen to Jews. But so we can ask ourselves, if God exists, why did he create Jews? Because you often ask the question like, well, why didn't he just give us a Quran when he was good and ready without all this palaver of the first revelation not quite good enough and the Jews what were they chosen for? It's like, well, I think it's all falling into place, don't you?
No, I don't think this is like a very nice way to, confuse people and make them wonder and not give it in a very straightforward, to the point way. And why did he wait so long to make a revelation for the Gentiles and just let them wander in the darkness? And,
To make
it's
them really, 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 really want it. That's why you
You
have an
know, well,
appetizer.
that's like not teaching your child anything until it's 18, and then being like, "Well, I didn't teach you anything because I wanted you to thirst for knowledge." Like, it's you have to teach your children when they're young. Otherwise, it's cruel to not teach your children
Yeah,
until they're
so
18.
okay, so okay, let's see. Imagine the Jews to be the firstborn, like the Abrahamic God is our papa and mama all rolled into one, um, and the Jews had their first revelation. I think it's kind of like mum and dad were not quite so rich when they had the first kid, but so the first kid didn't go to private school, and then they made their fortune, and then the second kid got a better you know standard of living. Which is not to say that they didn't love the first kid. They just couldn't afford to send their firstborn to private school or take them to Disneyland. I mean, do you see it? It's not deliberate.
God is not a parent who needs to make money. This is not like God's not limited like that. It's God could have done whatever he wanted in whatever fashion he wanted, and it just doesn't make sense to human
Yeah, just
reasons.
because you don't think it makes sense doesn't mean there is no reason. So I'm saying okay, he gave the Jews the first book, and it's too hard for them to follow. And then he
Why did
gave
he give it to them? Why would he knew it would be too hard for them to follow? So why would he even give it to them?
to make people afterwards yearn for their own revelation, and then they yearned for it and yearned for it, and then he finally gave them the Quran. And what did they do? They distorted it and ignored cherry picked just the bits they wanted to obey and ignored the ones they didn't. And so I guess he's teaching us a lesson, right? Not to cherry pick, maybe. Because I'm basically saying, if secular Quranism were ever adopted, then members of the Supreme Court would have to, go through the Quran with a fine tooth comb and identify, list, and number the verses that they consider to be the commandments of Allah capable of being made into legislation. And they all have to agree. So and that's because I don't want people, moaning at me and saying, oh, but secular Quranism is just your favourite verses, Claire. It's like, no, no, no. I'm going to leave it to the Supreme Court to do. And then maybe, these Muslims, it's like, bloody hell, 1400 years of history, and you can't tell me exactly how many. You haven't done that. You haven't identified, listed, and numbered the commandments of Allah.
Well, neither of you.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to do it because they'll say, ooh, that's not the number, that's not the correct number or whatever. So I'm
Yeah,
just
but then
going to.
anyone who does it is going to have that problem. If the United States government did it, all the Muslims would say you don't have the correct number.
No, but it doesn't matter because it's like only the Supreme Court can do it. Because obviously you can't get everybody interested in the subject to agree on the exact number. How many members of the Supreme Court are there?
9, and who knows, they're all going to agree on the number.
Yeah, well, it'll be an interesting exercise, but then I'm sure, other people will also want to read the Quran. Maybe not just, people in America, but in the rest of the world. And fundamentally, it falls on your shoulders. Because you can take an interest in it, and with your energy and your
Which is
conviction,
fading.
you could be, yeah, you could be doing this instead of doubting everything and wanting to make people fight. You could be doing something constructive, and you can even maybe achieve success in this lifetime, but you won't.
Because they're not my values. They're not my values, Claire.
What are your values?
I'm against monotheism. I don't believe blasphemy should be outlawed. I don't believe in sexual regulation, but I believe in high fertility, no murder, no theft, no animal cruelty, no environmental destruction, courts of justice. So yeah, I do have
Yeah.
values.
So we're already agreed. We listed a whole bunch of things that we're agreed with. I'm not going to be executing idolaters and blasphemers. I will
Yeah, well, I
allow
don't want them
sex outside
disparaged.
marriage within reason. So there you go, and you can be gay. What's a problem?
But I can't say it in public.
Yeah, because of your birth rates. Don't you care about your people?
There's other ways. There's
You,
social. Try something. Try another. No one's ever even tried. You're not even. You're against even trying something
I'm
different.
trying my thing. I'm not stopping you from
Your way is
promoting
the old.
your thing.
It's the old way. It's the old way that
Okay, I do things in my old way, and you can promote your thing on top of my old thing.
well, sexual
Okay,
liberation
just
and
imagine
polytheism.
right. So I'm this horse and cart, and you can, be you with your laptop on my cart. You can promote your, whatever. I don't see why that's impossible.
It's not impossible, but it's just that's
You
not the
have to
route.
do it
I don't
because
have to do.
well, I don't know what else are you going to do then.
Well, I'm
You,
promoting my own thing, so I'm
yeah,
doing
yeah, yeah.
something.
I mean, it wouldn't work that well if you were promoting it all by yourself.
Well, every founder of something new at one time promoted something all by themselves.
Yeah. So we can imagine ourselves to be on what hand carts, right? Do you know what they are?
Well, I don't mind talking to you, and I published your manifesto, and I wrote out all the laws for you. I don't know. It's not that I'm not. I write about secular Quranism, so I spread the
Yes.
word about.
Thank you for that.
Have you ever
That's
heard of
having
something?
millennial woes.
Have you ever heard of something called negative marketing?
Um, but what saying? Don't buy this thing,
Well,
and then making people buy it because you've negged it.
negative marketing is when you get yourself involved in a controversy, and people, it it's negative, but it draws attention. So by preaching against secular Quranism, it's negative marketing. I'm teaching people about it, aren't I?
Yes. But I suppose positive marketing would be even more helpful, and then then I can show how flexible it is because I'm not saying but you can't be promoting your thing on my thing. I'm saying yeah you go ahead, go right ahead. I'm not stopping you. Anyway, I guess we're kind of promoting each other's stuff anyway, kind of like a seesaw or a hand cart, I guess. But I'm just saying, maybe it's time to accelerate.
Well, I don't know. All I can say is that, the work that I've done in order to, I know that I've inspired Hindus to get further in bed with the Jews. They were sending me these emails like, well, look what we did. And we just organized this Hindu-Jew, program. And, at least if you isolate them together, they're going to come together even more. So if you attack the Judeo-Hindu nexus, they're just going to get further in bed with each other. And so, I've had some kind of
The
effect in order
Hindus
to.
have no principles anyway, so you don't
Well,
need to
now
worry.
they do. If they're monotheists, they have a principle, don't they?
No, they'll just do whatever.
That's a principle. That's a principle. I'm a monotheist. That's a principle.
Yeah, but then I'm sure they'll be going to their making sacrifices of their idols or whatever. They just
But
say
they're
one
still
thing and do
monotheists.
another.
Monotheists, and even Maimonides didn't say that the idol itself was the problem. It was the polytheism. Maimonides
What do
never
you
said that.
mean?
Maimonides never said that you cannot make an idol of the one true God.
Oh, it's assumed. No, he did. He did. Read the third principle of Judaism.
Okay, but you don't necessarily need to believe that God is incorporeal in the idol. You don't need to believe that.
No, the Jews call it bowing before idols. Literally, I mean, it's very specific. It's not just
Well,
sort of
Judaism
thinking of God as a
evolves.
man or anything like that. It's like bowing
Judaism
before idols,
evolves.
not allowed.
Judaism evolves, and I don't know what to tell you. It's not the same Judaism. It's a different Judaism, and like David always said, what is Judaism? What the scriptures say, or what Jews do? You know.
David is a bit unprincipled because fundamentally he's a liberal. I don't know if you heard of me, David and I talking on the Rushma show, but he might as well be an atheist really, because he's obviously not going to confront the Christians about their idolatry and blasphemy, but to be fair to David, the Muslims are reluctant to do it too. And obviously they're not going to do it on my say-so. They'll only do it if their imam or, somebody with a bigger channel than me, tells them to do so. But I'm saying they should work out that's what chapter 18 verse 4 means. And if the Gazans are being exterminated, it's because of them, these Muslims who refuse to follow the logic of their beliefs. So it's like, yeah, if God really does exist, and he made all those laws and they're all in the Quran, and these Muslims have not been obeying, then, of course they're going to get into trouble and they're going to be punished if God exists, right? I mean, it's not even rocket science. But they pretend not to understand, so they can ignore their moral imperative. Have you heard the expression moral imperative?
Well, to say that you have the moral imperative, people say that.
You have to heed it. You have to follow it. So I mean that explains perfectly why people pretend not to understand what you're saying. So they can say, I didn't know what the hell Vincent or Claire or whoever was talking about. So I don't know. I just it's like all the time they did, but they just didn't know. They didn't want to do the thing that their moral imperative, the logic of their conclusions tells them to do. They didn't want to do it. Yeah, it's sort of like, okay, a drunk. I'm sure the drunk knows that, being an alcoholic is not a good idea, but he will not be confessing to his alcoholism because, AA have a ritual, don't they? It's like, well, hopefully, if you have a drink problem, you'll be able to, stand up and say, if you are indeed an alcoholic, you'll say, I Bill Vincent, I'm an alcoholic. My name is Vincent Bruno, and I'm an alcoholic. If you were, but it takes a long time to come to terms with it, because if you lose your job, or your wife leaves you, you might say, I never got on with her. I'm glad she left. I hated my job anyway, or whatever. So I think people can be in denial for a long time. Jay, he used to give lots of talks, inspirational talks at AA, because I guess he's quite good at speaking, and he's, very good at bullshitting people. And I did ask him once, how many years was it before you admitted that you were an alcoholic? And I think he said 6 or 7. So it can take a while. I mean, look at the Christians. I mean, they're still in denial that, shock horror, they are guilty of idolatry. That's why they keep pretending not to understand. It's completely neurotic. And yes, of course, the Jews, I think they of all people, would know. Like actually, if God exists, only 2 religions are acceptable to him. Only Judaism or Islam. I mean, that's it. You know, it's as simple as that. And it's like, okay, so which one should we choose? And I'm saying even a Jew would have to choose the Quran because he wants to avoid all the capital punishments. But of course, he won't do that because, you know, so other things are more important to him, like, oh, but I want to stay with my Jewish community. I don't want to offend mum and dad and rabbi and, you know, whatever. So that's why they cleave to the religion of their parents. But I'm saying, okay, you know, I'm not saying you have to stop being a Jew or whatever, but I mean, this is the real reason why you're, you know, not admitting it, because otherwise you'd be saying, oh, as a Christian, it seems that I've been following the wrong religion for, what, 1700 years? And as a Jew, well, even longer, or, okay, make it 1400 years. Because I suppose, you know, if the Jew had been on the ball and you know, read the Quran the moment it was published, and then he would think, oh, that's a Noahide religion. Oh, it's less restrictive than Judaism. Why don't I convert to Islam? And Vincent has gone. And I guess I should end this stream, having made my point, more or less. So I am just going to say that people can remain in denial for a long time, and obviously whole civilizations can remain in denial for hundreds of years, maybe even for half a millennium, and this is something to consider when we think of all the things about ourselves and our lives that we would like to forget about and ignore. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, and talk to you before too long.